I'm Grace Howard, 68 years old. The night my daughter threatened to keep my grandchildren from me forever unless I signed over my house, I made a decision that would destroy her entire plan with just 14 words in blue ink. Sarah arrived on Christmas Eve with legal papers and an ultimatum that shattered my heart. Sign everything over immediately or never see Emma and Josh again. My own child had weaponized my love for my grandchildren, turning them into crying hostages in my kitchen while she demanded my home. The next morning, she threw me out like garbage, my belongings scattered on the lawn, neighbors recording everything on their phones. She'd already found buyers, already spent the deposit on a beach house in Malibu, already posted her victory on Instagram. What she hadn't done was read the tiny clause I'd added below my signature. Before we dive into how that single sentence unraveled a months-long conspiracy and cost my daughter everything she thought she'd stolen, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. This Christmas Eve started with me baking cookies for grandchildren I didn't know would become weapons against me. 2 years ago, when Robert passed, I thought I knew what loneliness meant. Our 4-bedroom house in Pasadena suddenly felt enormous, each room echoing with memories of better times. But I kept myself busy, tending to Robert's rose garden, cooking Sunday dinners that I'd share with Mrs. Martinez next door, volunteering at the church food bank twice a week. The house itself was our pride and joy. Robert bought it in 1978 for $65,000. And now the realtors kept sliding flyers under my door, suggesting it was worth $1.2 million. Prime California real estate, they called it. I'd just tossed those flyers in the recycling. This wasn't real estate to me. It was where Robert proposed to me on the back porch, where Sarah took her first steps, where we'd hosted 43 Thanksgiving dinners. I still remember the day Robert came home, furious and shaking. He'd been conned in a business contract, lost $30,000 because he hadn't read the fine print. That night, he sat me down at this very kitchen table. "Grace," he said, holding my hands, "promise me something. Never sign anything without reading every word. And if you must sign under pressure, always add your own terms in blue ink. It stands out, legally binding, and most people never notice it." I thought it was paranoia from a wounded man. I practiced his advice a few times with small contracts, the cable company, a roof repair, always adding tiny protective clauses in blue ink. The contractors never noticed. Robert would smile and say, "The devil's in the details, Grace, especially the ones in blue." Little did I know that lesson would save me from my own daughter. The changes in Sarah started small, like cracks in a windshield before it shatters. She'd always called every Sunday, but after Robert's funeral, those calls became interrogations disguised as concern. "Mom, are you keeping up with the property taxes? You know they've gone up again. Have you thought about downsizing? That house is too big for one person. Mark knows a great retirement community in Riverside. Very affordable." Affordable. That word should have been my first warning. Sarah drove a Tesla and lived in a house with a pool, but suddenly she was concerned about affordable options for me? The visits grew shorter, but more pointed. She'd walk through the house like a real estate agent, opening closets, checking the basement, even asking about the new water heater. Mark would trail behind her, taking photos with his phone. "For insurance purposes," he claimed when I asked. Then came the subtle cruelty. Emma and Josh, my precious grandchildren, used to spend weekends with me. Sarah started canceling last minute. "The kids have too much homework. Josh has practice. Emma's not feeling well." But I'd see their Instagram posts at the mall, at movies, everywhere but with their grandmother. Mrs. Martinez noticed it too. We were trimming the hedge between our properties when she mentioned, "I haven't seen those beautiful grandchildren of yours in months, Grace." "They're busy," I said, but the words tasted like ash. "Mm-hmm," she replied, giving me that look that said she wasn't buying it. "Well, you know I just installed one of those doorbell cameras. Amazing what they pick up. License plates, conversations, everything. Very clear, even at night." I thought she was just making conversation about technology. I had no idea she was giving me a lifeline. Thanksgiving came with the hollow promise of family. Sarah called the morning of, her voice dripping with fake regret. Mom, I'm so sorry, but Mark's parents made surprise plans. We have to go to their place. 43 years of hosting Thanksgiving, and suddenly I was alone with a 20-pound turkey and enough side dishes for 12 people. I sat at the dining table, Robert's chair empty beside me, Sarah's usual seat across from me vacant, the kids' places still set with their special plates, the ones with the cartoon characters they'd outgrown, but still insisted on using. That's when Mark called. Not Sarah. Mark. Grace, quick question. Where do you keep the deed to the house? Sarah wants to make sure all the paperwork is in order. You know, in case something happens. In case something happens. The words chilled me more than the November wind rattling the windows. It's with my lawyer, I lied. It was actually in Robert's old filing cabinet, but something in Mark's tone made me cautious. You should really keep those documents more accessible, he pressed. What's your lawyer's name again? I hung up. My hands were shaking. Mrs. Martinez must have seen me through the window because 10 minutes later, she was at my door with a pie. No one should eat Thanksgiving dinner alone, she said, inviting herself in. Over turkey and stuffing, she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. I saw Sarah's car drive by 3 times yesterday, she said carefully. She slowed down each time, like she was checking if you were home, but she never stopped. Maybe she was just, Grace, honey, I've known you for 20 years. Something's not right. And that new camera of mine, it records everything, just so you know. December arrived with the loneliness that cut deeper than winter wind. I decorated the house anyway. Robert would have wanted me to. Each ornament I hung was a memory. Sarah's kindergarten handprint, Emma's first Christmas, Josh's homemade angel with crooked wings. The tree stood 8 feet tall in the living room, twinkling with lights but feeling desperately empty without children's laughter to complete it. I wrapped presents for Emma and Josh anyway. A chemistry set for Josh. He'd mentioned wanting one in our last real conversation. A complete set of the Harry Potter books for Emma, leather-bound and beautiful. I placed them under the tree and tried not to think about whether they'd ever be opened. On December 20th, an email from Sarah popped up in my inbox. The subject line read, "Urgent. Family matter needs immediate attention." My heart jumped. Was someone sick? Had something happened to the kids? I clicked open the message. Mom, we need to discuss your living situation. It's become clear you can't manage that house alone. Mark and I have found the perfect solution. We'll discuss when we see you. This can't wait any longer. Something about the tone, cold, businesslike, nothing like my daughter, made me forward it to my email folder labeled Important. Robert had taught me to document everything after his contract disaster. Paper trails save lives, Grace, he used to say. I replied simply, come for Christmas Eve dinner, 6 p.m. Sarah's response was instant. We'll be there at 8. Have the kids' presents ready. They can only stay an hour. Only stay an hour. On Christmas Eve. My grandchildren were being rationed to me like medicine, and I was too heartbroken to realize they were about to become weapons. The knock came at exactly 8 p.m., sharp and demanding, nothing like the excited rattling Sarah used to do as a child on Christmas Eve. I opened the door to find my daughter transformed into someone I barely recognized. Designer coat, cold eyes, and not even a pretense of holiday warmth. "Hello, Mother," she said. Not Mom, Mother. Mark stood behind her like a bodyguard, and between them, Emma and Josh looked miserable. Emma, 13 now, wouldn't meet my eyes. Josh, 11, started toward me for a hug, but Mark's hand on his shoulder stopped him cold. "Kids, wait in the living room," Sarah commanded. They shuffled past me without a word, without even the excited run toward the presents they'd always done before. Sarah pulled a manila folder from her oversized purse. "We need to handle this tonight." "It's Christmas Eve, Sarah. Can't this wait until—" "No!" She pushed past me into the kitchen, spreading papers across the table where we'd shared thousands of meals. "Sit down." I sat, my hands trembling slightly. The kitchen felt colder despite the warmth from the oven where cookies were baking, cookies I'd made for grandchildren who weren't allowed to eat them. "Mom, you're 68 years old. You've fallen twice this year." I tripped over a garden hose, Sarah. "You forgot Emma's birthday." "I didn't forget. You told me the party was canceled, then had it anyway. Mark stepped forward, his presence suddenly menacing. Grace, we're trying to help you here. This house is too much for you. Sign these papers, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. From the living room, I could hear Emma crying softly. Josh was whispering to her, trying to comfort his sister. My grandchildren held hostage in my own home on Christmas Eve. Sarah leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the papers. This is a simple property transfer. You sign the house over to us, and we'll handle everything. Taxes, maintenance, all of it. And where would I live? My voice came out smaller than intended. We found a lovely assisted living facility in Riverside, very appropriate for someone in your situation. My situation? Mark's voice turned hard. Your declining mental capacity. We've documented everything, Grace. The missed appointments, the confusion about dates, that time you called Sarah by her aunt's name. That was once, and I'd just woken up from— Sign it, Sarah interrupted, or you'll never see Emma and Josh again. The words hung in the air like poison. From the living room, Emma's crying grew louder. You wouldn't, I whispered. I'm their mother. I decide what's best for them. And being around someone with dementia isn't safe. Sarah's eyes were steel. We've already talked to a lawyer about guardianship concerns. Who do you think a judge will believe? Two successful professionals worried about their children's safety, or an elderly woman who talks to her dead husband's roses? Grandma! Josh's voice cracked from the doorway. Mark immediately grabbed him. Back to the living room, now. But Dad, now. Josh's tears started then, and something inside me broke. But as I looked at the papers, Robert's voice echoed in my memory. Blue ink, Grace. Always protect yourself. I need to read this first, I said, reaching for the document. There's no time for— Mark started. If you want my signature, I'm reading it. My voice found strength from somewhere deep. Or leave now, and you'll get nothing. Sarah checked her phone. You have 5 minutes. My hands shook as I read through the document. It was exactly what I expected. Complete transfer of ownership, effective immediately. Sarah and Mark would own everything, and I would have 72 hours to vacate, 3 days to leave the home Robert and I had built over 45 years. I need a pen, I said quietly. Sarah quickly produced a black pen from her purse, eager to close the deal. But I shook my head. I use blue ink for legal documents. Robert always insisted. I stood and walked to the kitchen drawer, the same drawer where Robert had kept his special pen, a Mont Blanc he'd bought to sign our first mortgage. My fingers found it, along with something else, the reading glasses Robert used for contracts, the ones with the magnification he needed to catch every detail. Returning to the table, I signed my name slowly, deliberately. Then, in tiny print below my signature, my hand steady despite my racing heart, I added a single line. Transfer contingent upon fulfillment of elder care obligations as per California Welfare and Institutions Code, FAR 15610.30. The words were so small, so neat, that without magnification, they looked like a decorative flourish under my signature. Sarah snatched the papers the moment I lifted the pen, not even glancing at what I'd written. Finally, she exhaled, folding the documents back into the folder. We'll be back tomorrow morning to help you pack. Mark was already heading for the door, car keys jingling. Kids, we're leaving! Emma and Josh appeared, their faces red with tears. Emma looked at the presents under the tree, then at me. Those are for you, I managed to say. They don't need more stuff, Sarah said coldly. They have everything they need. Everything except a grandmother, I thought, as the door slammed behind them. Through the window, I watched them celebrate in my driveway. Mark actually popped champagne. They'd brought champagne to steal my home. Sarah laughed, a sound that cut through the silent night. She held the folder up like a trophy. 48 hours until closing, I heard Mark shout. The buyers are ready. Buyers. They already had buyers lined up. This had been planned for months, maybe longer. Emma and Josh sat in the back seat of the Tesla, their faces pressed against the windows, looking back at the house, at me, with confusion and sorrow. Sarah got in without a backward glance. Mark honked the horn twice as they drove away, a victory lap for stealing from an old woman. I stood there in my Christmas Eve kitchen, cookies cooling on the counter, presents sitting unopened under the tree, and did something they'd never expect. I smiled. Because they'd been so drunk on their victory, so eager to leave with their prize, they'd never looked at what I'd written. They'd never noticed the blue ink forming those tiny, powerful words that would destroy everything they thought they'd won. Robert's voice whispered in my memory, "The devil's in the details, Grace." They arrived at 7 a.m. sharp on December 26th with a U-Haul truck and 4 hired movers. I was still in my nightgown when the pounding started. "Open up, Mother!" Sarah's voice was triumphant. "Time to go!" I opened the door to find my daughter directing movers, like a general commanding troops. "The bedroom furniture stays," she announced. "We're renovating anyway. Just take her personal items." The movers looked uncomfortable as they pushed past me. One, a young man about Josh's age, mumbled, "Sorry, ma'am," as he entered. "You don't need to supervise," Sarah said, blocking my path to the bedroom. "We've got this handled." I watched in horror as they carelessly threw my belongings into boxes. Robert's books, our wedding china, photo albums, everything tossed like garbage. When I tried to properly wrap Robert's father's watch, Mark grabbed it from my hands. "You're taking too long. The facility in Riverside is expecting you by noon." "I haven't agreed to any facility." "You don't have a choice anymore." Sarah held up the signed papers. "This is our house now." By 9 a.m., my entire life was either in boxes on the lawn or in trash bags on the curb. Neighbors had started to gather, watching in shock. Mrs. Martinez stood at her fence, her phone out, recording everything. "This is elder abuse," she called out. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," Mark laughed. "We have a legal document. She signed it willingly." Sarah threw my car keys at my feet. "The retirement home's address is in the GPS. Don't come back here. Ever." The door to my own home slammed in my face. Through the window, I could see Sarah already on her phone with contractors, planning my erasure. I drove to San Diego in a blur of tears, my few salvaged belongings rattling in the trunk. My sister Ruth took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms. "What did she do?" Ruth asked, though somehow she already knew. Over tea that grew cold while I talked, I told her everything. Ruth's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, cold determination. "We're calling a lawyer. Now." "It's no use. I signed the papers." "Grace, you're the smartest woman I know. You didn't just sign those papers. What did you do?" I told her about the blue ink, about the clause I'd added. Ruth's eyes widened. "California elder law. Robert mentioned it once, didn't he? At that dinner when his mother was sick?" The memory clicked. Robert's mother had been pressured to sign over her assets by a nephew. Robert had spent weeks researching elder protection laws. "The law is clear," he'd said. "If you accept property from an elderly person, you accept the obligation to care for them. Abandon that obligation, and the transfer is void." Ruth was already on her phone. "Thompson, it's Ruth. We need you." "Yes, it's about Grace." "They did what?" James Thompson had been Robert's best friend and lawyer for 30 years. Within an hour, he was sitting in Ruth's living room, reading the photographed contract I'd taken before signing. "Grace," he said, looking up with something like awe. "This clause you added? It's brilliant. And that doorbell camera footage Mrs. Martinez has? That's proof of abandonment. They kicked you out within 48 hours of the transfer. No judge in California would uphold this contract." I mean your daughter just played herself. And pro bono? After what Robert did for me? This one's personal. Thompson worked like a man possessed. "We need everything documented," he said, setting up a war room in Ruth's dining room. "Every text, every email, every witness." Mrs. Martinez was our first call. "I have 3 hours of footage," she said immediately. "Crystal clear. Mark throwing your things on the lawn, Sarah laughing while you cried. I also recorded them talking about the buyers they had lined up. It's all here." "Send everything to my secure server," Thompson instructed. "You're a godsend, Mrs. Martinez." I remembered the email Sarah had sent about my living situation and logged into my account. There it was, in the important folder, along with 12 other emails I'd saved over the past 6 months. Each one showed the progression of their plan, subtle at first, then increasingly aggressive. "This one from October," Thompson pointed out, "where she asks about your life insurance policies, and this one where Mark inquires about the home's current market value. They've been planning this since at least July." Ruth discovered Sarah's Facebook page, which she'd forgotten to block us from. Post after post about renovating our new Pasadena home, complete with contractor meetings dated 2 weeks before Christmas Eve. One photo showed her holding paint samples in my living room, taken during a visit when she'd claimed Emma was sick and needed to use the bathroom. "She's documenting her own premeditation," Thompson marveled. "It's like she wanted to get caught." "No," I said quietly. "She just never thought I'd fight back. I was supposed to be the weak old woman who didn't understand contracts." Thompson smiled, the kind of smile that probably terrified opposing counsel. "She's about to learn that underestimating Grace Howard was the worst mistake of her life." If you've ever felt powerless against family betrayal, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps me share these important stories about standing up for yourself, even when it's against your own blood. By mid-January, Sarah had the house on the market for $1.5 million. She'd painted my yellow kitchen white, ripped out Robert's roses, and staged it like a magazine spread. The listing photos were everywhere: Zillow, Realtor.com, even a feature in the Pasadena real estate newsletter. "Historic craftsman with modern updates," the listing read. "Motivated sellers, quick closing available." Motivated sellers. They were so eager to cash out, they'd dropped the price twice in 2 weeks. Thompson had me stay quiet, letting them think they'd won. "Give them rope," he said. "They're hanging themselves beautifully." The torture was seeing the photos online. My home transformed into something sterile and cold. Robert's workshop converted into a yoga studio. The breakfast nook where Emma and Josh used to do homework was now a wine-tasting corner. Then Thompson got a call that changed everything. "The buyer's attorney wants to meet," he told me, barely containing his excitement. Guess who the buyer's hired to review the paperwork? "Who?" "Jennifer Walsh. She's the best real estate attorney in Pasadena, and she happens to be my former law partner. I trained her myself." 2 days later, Jennifer called Thompson directly. "Jim, you need to see what I found in this contract. There's a handwritten clause here that, well, it changes everything. The sellers are about to have a very bad day." Sarah was probably picking out furniture for her new beach house with my money. Mark was likely calculating their profit after the sale. They had no idea that their carefully constructed plan was about to collapse. "Let them schedule the closing," Thompson advised. "The more confident they are, the harder they'll fall. And Grace, make sure you're ready for Thanksgiving. We're going to give your family something to really be thankful for." My phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon in February. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Grandma?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Emma, sweetheart, are you okay?" "I'm calling from the school nurse's office. I said I felt sick." Her voice broke. "Grandma, why did you leave us? Mom said you don't love us anymore, that you chose money over family." My heart shattered. "Emma, honey, that's not true. I love you and Josh more than anything in the world." "Then why won't you come see us? Why did you move away?" "Emma, did your mom tell you I moved away by choice?" "She said you sold the house to them and left because you didn't want to be our grandma anymore." She was crying now. "Josh cries every night. He keeps asking when you're coming back." I hit the record button on my phone, remembering Thompson's advice about documentation. "Emma, I need you to know something. I never chose to leave. I was forced to go, and I'm fighting to come back to you." "Mom said you're sick, that you forget things. Do I sound sick to you?" "No. You sound like Grandma. The real Grandma. Because that's who I am. And Emma, I'm going to fix this. I promise." "I have to go. The nurse is coming back." Her voice dropped even lower. "Mom doesn't know I called. She took your number out of my phone, but I memorized it, like you taught me. Important numbers should live in your head, not just your phone." "That's my smart girl." "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweetheart, both of you, forever." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, now armed with the most powerful evidence of all. Proof that Sarah was poisoning my grandchildren against me. March arrived with unexpected rain and a phone call that set everything in motion. Thompson had been waiting by his phone all morning, and when it rang, he put it on speaker so I could hear. "Jim, it's Jennifer Walsh. We need to talk about the Howard property." "Oh? Is there a problem?" Thompson's voice was innocently curious. "You know damn well there's a problem. I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this. There's a handwritten clause here below Grace Howard's signature." "Really? What does it say?" Jennifer read it slowly. "Transfer contingent upon fulfillment of elder care obligations as per California Welfare and Institutions Code Section 115.6.110.30. Interesting. And my clients are about to wire $1.4 million for a house that might not legally belong to the sellers. Jim, I need to know, is Grace Howard being cared for by Sarah and Mark Miller?" "I can definitively say she is not. In fact, I have video evidence of them throwing her out of the house the day after Christmas." The silence on the other end stretched for 10 seconds. "Those idiots," Jennifer finally said. "They violated the contingency clause. The transfer is void." "That would be my assessment as well." "Jim, is Grace your client?" "She is." "Then we have a problem. My clients are supposed to close next week. Sarah Miller has already spent the deposit on a beach house in Malibu. Yes, she posted about it on Instagram. If this contract is void, then Sarah and Mark Miller are attempting to sell property they don't own. That's fraud, Jennifer." "I'm calling their attorney right now. This is going to get ugly." Thompson smiled at me. "No, Jennifer. This is going to get just." Within 2 hours, Sarah's attorney called Thompson directly. I could hear him screaming through the phone from across the room. "This is extortion. That clause was added after the fact." "I have photos of the original document taken by my client before she left the house," Thompson replied calmly. "The clause is clearly visible, written at the time of signing. Blue ink, as you can see, which shows beautifully in the images. No one would agree to such a clause. No one has to agree. Under California law, any handwritten additions to a contract by the signing party are legally binding if not explicitly rejected by the other party at the time of signing. Your clients had the opportunity to read the document. They chose not to." Thompson pulled up the California legal code on his laptop, reading aloud. "Elder abuse includes the abandonment of an elder by someone who has assumed responsibility for care or custody. By accepting the property transfer, the Millers accepted responsibility. By throwing Mrs. Howard out the next day, they committed elder abuse and violated the contingency clause." "This won't hold up in court?" "Would you like to test that theory? Because I also have 3 hours of security footage showing your clients physically removing an elderly woman from her home in December. I have emails showing premeditation. I have a recorded phone call where they're poisoning her grandchildren against her. Would you like to see how a jury responds to that?" The screaming stopped. Then a different voice, panicked, younger. Sarah had grabbed the phone. "Mom? Mom, you tricked us." "No, dear," Thompson said loudly enough for me to hear. "You tricked yourselves. You were so eager to steal that you forgot to read. The house was never yours. It never will be." The unraveling happened fast. Sarah called me 18 times that day. I didn't answer once. The voicemails progressed from angry to pleading to threatening and back to desperate. "Mom, this is fraud. You can't do this." "Please, we can work something out. You've ruined everything. We put a deposit on the Malibu house. I'll sue you for intentional infliction of emotional distress." "Mom, please. We're going to lose everything." Mark tried a different approach, sending text messages that Thompson eagerly screenshotted. "Grace, be reasonable. We're family. You're destroying your grandchildren's future. We'll let you see the kids if you drop this." That last one was particularly damning, using the children as bargaining chips again, in writing. Jennifer Walsh called with an update. "The buyers are pulling out completely. They're also demanding their deposit back, plus damages for the failed inspection and mortgage application fees, about $50,000 total." Sarah and Mark tried hiring 3 different law firms. Each one reviewed the case and declined. Thompson had made strategic calls to his colleagues, sharing just enough detail about the evidence we had. No reputable attorney in Pasadena wanted to touch a case involving documented elder abuse. Finally, they hired a bottom-feeder attorney from Riverside who specialized in desperate cases. He lasted exactly one meeting with Thompson before advising his clients to settle immediately and pray Mrs. Howard doesn't press criminal charges. Mrs. Martinez told me later that she'd seen Sarah in the driveway of my house, screaming at Mark. "You said she was senile. You said this would be easy." The marriage that had conspired to rob me was crumbling under the weight of their own greed. November approached with the inevitability of justice. Thompson had been busy. Every document was organized, every piece of evidence cataloged. We had a case that was bulletproof. "Thanksgiving is at Patricia's this year," Ruth informed me. Patricia, our cousin, had a house big enough for the entire extended family, 30-plus relatives who had no idea what had transpired. "Sarah doesn't know you're coming." "Perfect," Thompson said. "I'll arrive at exactly 3 p.m. after dinner starts. Very polite, very professional, just serving some documents." But I had a different idea. "No, if we're doing this, we're doing it right. This family needs to know what happened, all of it." I spent the week preparing, not just legally, but emotionally. I practiced what I would say, how I would say it. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. And truth, as Robert always said, was its own kind of justice. The night before Thanksgiving, I couldn't sleep. I stood in Ruth's guest room, holding the one thing I'd managed to save from the house, Robert's blue Mont Blanc pen, the same pen I'd used to write those tiny words that changed everything. "Thank you," I whispered to his memory, "for teaching me to protect myself." Ruth knocked on the door. "Grace, Patricia just called. Sarah RSVP'd, yes, she's bringing the kids." My heart jumped. Emma and Josh. I'd see my grandchildren again. "Oh, and Grace?" Ruth smiled. "Patricia asked Sarah to bring the pumpkin pie. Sarah said she's too busy with the house sale and will just buy one from the store." The house sale. She was still trying to sell my house, even knowing the sale couldn't go through. The delusion was complete. Tomorrow, it would shatter. Patricia's house smelled like Thanksgivings of my childhood, turkey, sage, and apple pie. I arrived early, helping with last-minute preparations. Patricia hugged me tight. "Ruth told me everything," she whispered. "The whole family is here for you." By 2 p.m., the house was full. Cousins, aunts, uncles, their children. The entire Howard and Patterson clan gathered in the massive dining room. Then, at 2:15, I heard Sarah's voice from the entryway. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was horrible." I stood in the kitchen doorway watching. Sarah walked in wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent, Mark trailing behind in his country club casual. But it was Emma and Josh who broke my heart. They looked hollow, thin, their spark dimmed. Then Emma saw me. "Grandma?" Her voice cracked. "Grandma!" She ran to me, Josh right behind her, both of them crashing into my arms. I held them as they sobbed, feeling their bodies shake with months of suppressed emotion. "What the hell are you doing here?" Sarah's voice cut through the reunion like a blade. The entire room went silent. 30 relatives turned to stare. "Hello, Sarah," I said calmly, still holding my grandchildren. "I brought your favorite pie, the apple one with the lattice crust, the way I've made it for 40 years. You need to leave, now." "No," Patricia stepped forward. "This is my house, and Grace is welcome here. If anyone should leave, Sarah, it's you." Mark grabbed Sarah's arm. "Let's just go." "No," I said, my voice carrying across the room. "We need to talk, all of us, as a family, about what really happened last Christmas Eve." Sarah's face went white. "Mother, don't you dare!" "I dare," I said. "Everyone deserves to know the truth." I gently released Emma and Josh, guiding them to sit with their great-aunt Patricia. Then I stood, facing the room of relatives who'd known me since I was a young bride. "Last Christmas Eve," I began, my voice steady, "Sarah and Mark came to my house with legal documents. They told me to sign over my home, Robert's and my home, or I would never see my grandchildren again. Gasps rippled through the room. Uncle James, the family patriarch at 82, set down his wine glass with a sharp clink. They used Emma and Josh as weapons, I continued, pulling out my phone. I have the emails. Would you like me to read them? Without waiting for an answer, I read Sarah's December 20th message aloud, then Mark's texts about my declining mental capacity. The room grew colder with each word. But that's not the worst part. I hit play on Emma's recorded call. Her young voice filled the room. Mom said you don't love us anymore, that you chose money over family. Emma started crying again. I didn't know, Grandma. I didn't know Mom was lying. The day after Christmas, I continued, they threw me out. Literally threw my belongings on the lawn. Mrs. Martinez, my neighbor, recorded it all. I connected my phone to Patricia's smart TV. The security footage played in devastating clarity. Sarah laughing as my photos were tossed in trash bags, Mark throwing my clothes on the wet grass, me standing on the sidewalk in my nightgown, crying. Dear God, Aunt Catherine whispered. Sarah, how could you? She's lying, Sarah shrieked. She's senile. Tell them, Mark. But Mark was backing toward the door, his face the color of ash. I'm not finished, I said. After they stole my house, they put it on the market for $1.5 million. They already spent the deposit on a beach house in Malibu, posted pictures on Instagram of their celebration dinner. I swiped to Sarah's Instagram, displaying it on the TV. There she was, champagne glass raised, captioned, New Year, new beach house, #blessed, #Malibu life. The date on the post was December 28th, 2 days after they'd thrown me out of my home. Uncle James stood up slowly. Sarah Miller, you're a disgrace to this family. The doorbell rang at exactly 3 p.m. Thompson entered, briefcase in hand, looking every inch the accomplished attorney he was. The room fell silent as he approached our table. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Thompson, Mrs. Howard's attorney and Robert Howard's friend of 40 years. He set his briefcase on the side table, pulling out documents. I'm here to explain the legal situation, since there seems to be some confusion. Sarah jumped up. You can't do this here. This is harassment. Actually, Ms. Miller, this is a family gathering where truths are being shared. You're free to leave if you'd like. Thompson's voice was ice. But you might want to hear this. He pulled out the contract, displaying it on a document camera he'd brought, which projected onto the TV. This is the document Mrs. Howard signed on Christmas Eve. You'll notice here, below her signature, a handwritten clause in blue ink. He zoomed in. The words were tiny, but clear. Transfer contingent upon fulfillment of elder care obligations as per California Welfare and Institutions Code, Sidebar 1F61-30. Under California law, this clause makes the transfer conditional. By accepting the property, Ms. Miller and Mr. Miller accepted the legal obligation to care for Mrs. Howard. When they threw her out the next day, which we have on video, they violated this condition. The transfer is legally void. That's fraud, Mark finally spoke. She tricked us. No, Mr. Miller. Fraud would be attempting to sell a house you don't own, which is what you've been doing. Thompson pulled out more papers. This is the listing. This is your signed agreement with buyers. This is the deposit you've already spent, all for a house that was never legally yours. He turned to the room. Elder abuse is a felony in California. It includes financial abuse of anyone over 65. The evidence here could result in criminal charges, jail time, and certainly civil penalties exceeding the value of the house itself. Sarah collapsed into a chair. Mom, please. There's more, Thompson continued. The attempt to isolate Mrs. Howard from her grandchildren constitutes emotional elder abuse. The false claims about her mental capacity constitute defamation. The threats documented in these emails constitute extortion. Uncle James spoke again. How much time could they face? Up to 4 years in prison for felony elder abuse, more for the additional charges. Stories like mine happen every day. If this resonates with you, please share this video. Together, we can protect our elderly parents and grandparents from exploitation. Sarah's desperate defense crumbled before it began. She's not mentally competent. Tell them, Mark. Tell them about the time she forgot Emma's birthday. You told me the party was canceled, I said quietly. then held it anyway without telling me. What about when you called me by Aunt Linda's name? Once, at 6 a.m. when you woke me from sleep. Hardly dementia. Thompson pulled out another document. This is Mrs. Howard's cognitive evaluation from Dr. Patricia Chen at Cedars-Sinai, dated 2 weeks ago. She scored in the 98th percentile for her age group. Her mental capacity is not only intact, but exceptional. This was all Mark's idea. Sarah suddenly turned on her husband. He said we deserved the house. He said you were too old to manage it. Mark's jaw dropped. Are you seriously throwing me under the bus right now? This was your plan. You're the one who spent months documenting fake evidence. They turned on each other, years of marriage dissolving into accusations and blame. The family watched in horrified fascination as the conspiracy unraveled into chaos. Josh stood up suddenly. "Stop it!" His 11-year-old voice cracked with emotion. "Just stop! You told us Grandma didn't want us anymore. You made us think she abandoned us. You're both liars." Emma joined her brother. "We heard you talking about selling Grandma's house to buy a boat. You said she was too stupid to notice the papers. You laughed about it." The room collectively inhaled. From the mouths of children, the final condemnation. Patricia stood up. "I think we've heard enough. Sarah, Mark, you need to leave. Now." "But we're family," Sarah started. "No," Uncle James interrupted. "Family doesn't do this. You're no longer welcome here." Uncle James commanded the room's attention with the authority of someone who'd led the family for 2 decades. "We need to take a family vote, all in favor of barring Sarah and Mark from future family gatherings until they make full restitution to Grace." 28 hands rose immediately. Even Mark's own parents, who'd driven from Arizona, raised their hands with tears streaming down their faces. "The vote is unanimous," James declared. "Sarah, you're no longer welcome at any family event. Not Christmas, not Easter, not birthdays, nothing, until you've made this right legally and financially." Sarah's cousin Michael, a pastor, stood up. "I'm withdrawing my offer to officiate at Emma's confirmation next year. I won't bless a family built on elder abuse." Her childhood friend Janet, now a teacher, added, "I'm removing you from the school's parent advisory board. We can't have someone who commits elder abuse influencing decisions about children." Mark's parents approached me, his mother weeping openly. "Grace, we're so ashamed. We had no idea. Whatever you need, testimony, support, anything, we're here for you." The social demolition was complete. In 30 minutes, Sarah and Mark had lost not just family, but their entire social standing. The Pasadena community was small, and by tomorrow, everyone would know. "But what about the kids?" Sarah played her last card. "You're traumatizing them." "No," Patricia said firmly. "You traumatized them when you used them as weapons. You traumatized them when you made them believe their grandmother abandoned them. This truth might hurt, but it will heal. Your lies were poison." Thompson stepped forward one last time. "Ms. Miller, Mr. Miller, you have 72 hours to vacate Mrs. Howard's house. If you're not out by Monday, we'll have the sheriff remove you." In the chaos, I'd almost forgotten about Emma and Josh. They stood together near the window, holding hands the way they used to when they were tiny. Emma, trying to be strong for her little brother. Josh, tears streaming down his face. "Grandma Grace?" Emma's voice was small. Can we stay with you?" Sarah lunged forward. "Absolutely not. They're my children. And they're my grandchildren," I said, moving to stand between Sarah and the kids. "Children who've been lied to, manipulated, and used as weapons." Mark's mother, Dorothy, stepped forward. "Sarah, you're in no state to care for these children right now. Let them stay with Grace for the weekend while you sort out the housing situation." "I said no!" Josh broke free and ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "I want Grandma! You lied to us! You said she didn't love us anymore!" Emma followed, standing tall beside me. "Mom, we know what you did. We heard you on the phone with the real estate agent, laughing about how you fooled Grandma. We're not babies. We understand more than you think." Thompson cleared his throat. "Given the documented emotional abuse of these minors, using them to extort property from their grandmother, Child Protective Services would be very interested in this case." Sarah went pale. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. You used my love for these children as a weapon. Now that weapon is turned on you. Mark's parents stepped forward. We'll take temporary custody if needed, but they want their grandmother, and after what you've done, they deserve to have what they want. Sarah looked around the room, finding no allies, no support, only disgusted faces and turned backs. Even Mark had stepped away from her. Monday came with swift efficiency. The sheriff arrived at my house at 9 a.m. to supervise Sarah and Mark's eviction. I wasn't there. Thompson advised me to stay away, but Mrs. Martinez filmed everything and provided play-by-play updates. They're arguing with the sheriff now. Sarah's crying. Mark's throwing things in boxes. Oh, Sarah just tried to take the new refrigerator, but the sheriff stopped her. That's yours, honey. They installed it after the illegal transfer. By noon, they were gone. Thompson had the locks changed immediately and hired a security company to patrol until I moved back in. The legal consequences cascaded like dominoes. The buyers Sarah had strung along sued for their deposit plus damages, $50,000. The beach house sellers in Malibu sued for breach of contract, another $100,000 in penalties. The contractors who'd started renovations demanded payment for work completed, $30,000. Their credit was destroyed. Sarah's employer, a high-end real estate firm, fired her when news of the attempted elder abuse fraud spread through Pasadena's real estate community. We can't have someone who steals houses representing our company, her boss told Thompson. Mark's consulting firm placed him on indefinite suspension pending an ethics review. Turns out, attempting to defraud your mother-in-law doesn't inspire client confidence. The court was efficient. The house was returned to my name free and clear. Sarah and Mark were ordered to pay all my legal fees, moving costs, and damages for emotional distress, a total of $75,000. How are we supposed to pay this? Sarah sobbed in court. We're broke. Perhaps you should have thought of that before you spent money that wasn't yours, the judge replied coldly. Payment plan approved. You'll pay Mrs. Howard $1,000 a month for the next 6 years. I walked through my front door on a bright Tuesday morning, 3 months after being thrown out. The house smelled wrong, like fresh paint and strangers. Sarah's cold renovations had stripped away decades of warmth. But bones of home remained. The creaky step on the staircase that Robert never fixed because he said it was better than an alarm system. The morning light through the kitchen window. The view of Mrs. Martinez's garden from the breakfast nook. Welcome home! Mrs. Martinez stood at the door with a casserole and a small army of neighbors. They flooded in with flowers, food, and furniture polish. Within hours, the house hummed with life again. Tom from across the street had saved Robert's roses in his greenhouse. I knew you'd be back, he said, helping me replant them. Robert would haunt me if I let these die. The neighbors had documented everything. Every contractor who'd come, every piece of furniture Sarah had thrown out, every time she'd laughed about her senile mother to anyone who'd listen. They'd been witnesses, waiting for justice. Patricia arrived with Emma and Josh, who'd been staying with her during the legal proceedings. They ran through the house, reclaiming their spaces. Emma's reading corner, Josh's spot by the window where he built Legos. It doesn't look like home anymore, Josh said sadly, seeing the white walls where family photos once hung. Then we'll make it home again, I said, pulling out a box I'd saved, starting with these. Inside were all our family photos, including ones of Sarah as a child, bright-eyed, gap-toothed, before greed poisoned her heart. Emma picked up one of her mother at her age. Was she always mean? Emma asked. No, sweetheart. Sometimes people lose their way, but that's their choice, not their destiny. Ruth kept me informed about Sarah's continued descent. They'd moved from their 5-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside. The Tesla was repossessed. Mark's Porsche sold to pay legal fees. I saw her at Walmart, Ruth reported. She was buying generic cereal and looking at her phone calculator. When she saw me, she literally ran to another aisle. The social fallout was complete. Sarah's Instagram, once full of luxury and hashtags, went dark. Her country club membership was revoked when news of the elder abuse spread. The private school where Emma and Josh had attended offered them full scholarships to continue, but only if they lived with me. Mark filed for separation after 3 months. His parents told me he'd moved back to their house in Arizona, claiming Sarah had manipulated him into everything. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but everyone knew the truth. There was no recovering from what they'd done together and to each other. Sarah tried selling her story to a tabloid, painting herself as a victim of a manipulative mother. Thompson shut that down with a cease and desist letter and threats of a defamation suit. The tabloid backed off immediately when they saw the evidence. "She's working at a call center now," Patricia told me during Sunday dinner, "under a fake name because no one in real estate will hire her." I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Not forgiveness, not yet, but pity for the daughter who'd chosen greed over love and lost everything that mattered. "Maybe someday she'll understand," I said. "Maybe," Patricia agreed. "But that's her journey now, not yours." Emma and Josh were healing, slowly. They saw a therapist weekly, learning to process betrayal and rebuild trust. Some nights, Josh still had nightmares about being kept from me. Emma still flinched when anyone mentioned her mother. Spring came with tentative healing. Emma and Josh had been living with me for 2 months, and we were finding our rhythm. Morning pancakes before school, homework at the kitchen table, bedtime stories for Josh, even though at 11 he claimed he was too old. The court had granted me temporary guardianship while Sarah addressed her issues. She was allowed supervised visits every other Saturday at a neutral location, the public library, with a social worker present. "Why did Mom do it, Grandma?" Josh asked one evening while we planted tomatoes in Robert's garden. "Didn't she love us enough?" "She loves you," I said carefully. "But sometimes adults get confused about what's important. They think money and things matter more than people. Like when Tommy at school stole my Pokemon cards because he wanted them more than he wanted to be my friend." Exactly like that, sweetheart, but much more serious. Emma was harder to reach. At 13, she understood the full betrayal. She'd started journaling, pages and pages of anger and hurt. Her therapist said it was healthy, necessary. One evening, she found me looking at old photos. "Is that Mom when she was my age?" "Yes, she was excited about the school play. She played Emily in our town." Emma studied the photo. "She looks happy, real happy, not Instagram happy." She was. "Your grandfather and I loved her very much. We still do, even though we're disappointed in her choices." "How can you love someone who hurt you so badly?" I pulled her close. "Because love isn't conditional, sweetheart. But trust? Trust has to be earned. And boundaries? Boundaries keep us safe. You can love someone from a distance until they prove they're safe to let close again." She leaned into me. "I'm glad you added that blue ink, Grandma." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." The letter arrived on a Thursday, 6 months to the day after Thanksgiving. Sarah's handwriting, once confident, now shaky. "Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. Mark left. I lost everything. I'm in therapy now, court-ordered but also necessary. I see what I did. I see who I became. I blame Mark for pushing me, but that's a lie, I told myself. It was me. I wanted the money. I wanted the life I thought I deserved. I used my own children as weapons. I threw my mother out of her home. There's no excuse for that. The therapist says I have narcissistic personality disorder with financial abuse tendencies. Fancy words for being a terrible person. I'm working on it, but I know that doesn't undo anything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to come back. I'm not even asking for money, though I'm barely surviving. I'm just saying I'm sorry. I know it's not enough. It will never be enough. I dream about Christmas Eve, about the look on your face when I threatened you with never seeing Emma and Josh again. I wake up sick, knowing I became a monster. Please tell the kids I love them. I know I don't deserve to, but I do. Sarah. I read it 3 times, then called Thompson. "It could be genuine," he said, "or it could be manipulation. The mention of barely surviving, the diagnosis that shifts some blame to mental illness. These could be tactics." "I know," I said, "but I want to respond." I wrote back, keeping a copy for Thompson. "Sarah, I received your letter. Apologies are words. Change is action. Continue your therapy. Make your court-ordered payments. Respect the boundaries set. Your children are healing. They don't need your love. They need your accountability. I forgive you for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean access. If you truly change, time will tell. Mom, Sarah wrote back immediately, and that's when I knew the apology wasn't genuine. Real change takes time. Real remorse sits with discomfort. Her quick response revealed the manipulation beneath. Mom, thank you for responding. Can we meet for coffee? I want to show you how much I've changed. Maybe we could discuss adjusting the payment plan and perhaps updating your will to include me again, for the children's sake. There it was, the real agenda. Thompson laughed when I showed him. 6 months of therapy and she's still trying to get into the will. Classic. I sent a certified letter, formal and final. Sarah, your immediate request for meetings, payment adjustments, and will modifications confirms you haven't changed. You're still prioritizing money over healing. The boundaries are no direct contact except through legal channels. All payments continue as court-ordered. You remain permanently removed from my will. The house is in an irrevocable trust for Emma and Josh. Supervised visits with your children continue until the court decides otherwise. These boundaries are non-negotiable. Attempting to circumvent them will result in a restraining order. Focus on your healing, not my assets. Grace Howard. I also instructed Thompson to draft an ironclad will. Emma and Josh would inherit everything through a trust, accessible only for education until they turned 25, then in stages. Sarah could never be executor, trustee, or beneficiary. Even if something happened to me tomorrow, she'd never touch a penny. Mark's parents agreed to be backup guardians. Patricia was named executor. Thompson would oversee everything. No one will ever manipulate you again, Thompson assured me as we signed the papers. More importantly, I said, no one will manipulate my grandchildren through me again. The blue ink on my signature seemed to glow with Robert's approval. Thompson outdid himself with the new legal structure. Every possible loophole was closed, every contingency planned for. This is Fort Knox in paper form, he said, spreading the documents across his conference table. The house goes into an irrevocable trust. You're the trustee while living. But if anything happens, Patricia takes over, then my firm if needed. The trust was beautiful in its simplicity and brutal in its exclusions. Emma and Josh would inherit equally, but with protections. No access until age 25, except for education and medical needs. Mandatory financial literacy courses before receiving any distributions. Sarah explicitly excluded, even as advisor or guardian of funds. If Sarah ever contests, her children's inheritance doubles from her would-be portion. This clause here, Thompson pointed, is my favorite. If Sarah ever tries to manipulate the kids into giving her money from their inheritance, they can invoke this protection. All funds immediately transfer to a locked trust until they're 30. We created medical directives, too. Sarah couldn't make decisions if I was incapacitated. That power went to Ruth, then Patricia, then Thompson, never Sarah. What about grandparent rights? I asked. If something happens before the kids are 18? Already handled. The court order for temporary custody becomes permanent guardianship if you predecease them returning to Sarah. Mark's parents are backup, then Patricia. Every account, every asset, every piece of jewelry was cataloged and protected. Even Robert's watch, the one Mark had grabbed from my hands, was specifically willed to Josh with the provision that Sarah could never possess it. Is it cruel, I asked Thompson, to be this thorough in excluding her? Is it cruel to lock your door against someone who's already robbed you once? He replied. This isn't cruelty, Grace. It's wisdom. Mark's parents, Dorothy and Richard, became unexpected pillars of support. They drove from Arizona monthly to help with the kids, bringing both grandparental love and profound shame about their son's actions. We failed somewhere, Dorothy said during one visit, watching Josh help me in the garden. We raised him better than this. Sometimes people make choices despite their raising, I offered, though the words were more generous than my feelings. Richard was more pragmatic. He'd been a judge before retiring and understood the legal implications. Mark's trying to claim Sarah manipulated him, but I've seen the emails. He was the instigator half the time. They fed each other's greed. They supervised Sarah's visits when I couldn't bear to go. Dorothy would return with detailed reports. She spent 20 minutes trying to quiz Emma about your finances. When Emma refused to answer, Sarah accused you of poisoning the children against her. She asked Josh if he'd like a new gaming system, then said she could buy one if Grandma would just be reasonable about the payments. She took photos of the kids, probably for social media to look like an involved mother. After one particularly manipulative visit, where Sarah had Josh in tears, claiming she was homeless because of me, Richard put his foot down. "I'm recommending to the court that visits be suspended," he said. "She's still using these children as emotional pawns." The next supervised visit, Sarah didn't show up, or the one after that. The social worker reported that Sarah had said, "What's the point if I can't even talk to my children normally?" "She's giving up," Dorothy said sadly. "When she can't manipulate, she withdraws." "Maybe that's for the best," I said, holding Josh as he processed another rejection. Absence is better than toxic presence. Christmas Eve arrived with snow, unusual for Pasadena. Emma and Josh had transformed the house back into a home, their laughter filling rooms that had been silent for too long. "Grandma, look!" Josh called from the living room where he and Emma were decorating the tree. "I found the angel I made in first grade." The crooked-winged angel topped our tree once again, presiding over a pile of presents that were modest but meaningful. No more designer labels or competition, just thoughtful gifts chosen with love. At 6 p.m. exactly, the same time Sarah had arrived last year with her papers, the doorbell rang. We all froze. "I'll get it," I said, my heart pounding. It was Sarah, thinner, older-looking, holding a small wrapped box. Behind her stood a woman I didn't recognize. "This is my sponsor, Linda," Sarah said quietly, "from AA and Debtors Anonymous. I'm 9 months clean from shopping addiction and financial manipulation. I know I'm not welcome, but I wanted to give this to you." She handed me the box with shaking hands. "Don't open it now, please, just after I leave." Emma and Josh appeared behind me. Sarah's face crumbled seeing them, but she didn't move forward, didn't reach out. "You look good," she told them. "Happy. That's what matters." "Mom," Emma said, her voice neutral. "Merry Christmas." "Are you better?" Josh asked directly, the way only children can. "I'm trying to be," Sarah answered. "Every day I'm trying." She turned to leave, then stopped. "The payments will never be late again, I promise." After she left, I opened the box. Inside was a silver picture frame with a photo I'd never seen. Sarah and me at her college graduation, both of us laughing, before money mattered more than memories. The note read, "To remind you of who I was and who I hope to be again someday." By February, I was speaking monthly at the Pasadena Senior Center. The room was always packed. Elder financial abuse was more common than anyone wanted to admit. "The shame keeps us silent," I told the audience of 60 and 70-somethings. "We think, how could my own child do this?" But silence is what they count on. I taught them practical protection. Never sign anything under pressure. Always add protective clauses in blue ink. Document everything. Emails, texts, conversations. Install security cameras. Keep copies of all documents off-site trust, but verify, even with family. "Especially with family," one woman said bitterly. "My son cleaned out my savings account while I was in the hospital." After each session, people stayed to share their stories. A man whose daughter sold his house while he was in rehab after a stroke. A woman whose grandson used her credit cards to fund his drug habit. A couple whose son-in-law convinced them to invest their retirement in his sure thing business. "The hardest part," I told them, "is accepting that love doesn't mean allowing abuse. You can love your children and still protect yourself from them." Thompson started attending, offering free consultations. "Grace has started something," he told me. "Elder financial abuse prosecutions are up 40% in Pasadena since your story got out." Local news picked up the story. "Grandmother fights back against financial elder abuse," ran in the Pasadena Star. Sarah was never named, but everyone knew. "Are you okay with the attention?" Ruth asked. "If it saves one person from going through what I did, It's worth it, I said. Robert always said our experiences were meant to teach others. This is my teaching. The blue ink clause became legendary in legal circles. Thompson said lawyers were now calling it the Grace Howard protection. 2 years have passed since that Christmas Eve when my daughter tried to steal everything. I'm 70 now, still in my house, still tending Robert's roses. Emma's finishing high school, headed to UCLA on a full scholarship. Josh just started high school, finally taller than me, still building Legos, but now teaching younger kids at the community center. Sarah continues her payments, never late, always with a brief note, working on myself. She hasn't asked for anything in over a year. Dorothy tells me she's still in therapy, still attending meetings, working as an administrative assistant at a nonprofit that helps gambling addicts. Ironic, considering her own addiction to money and lifestyle. The house has become what it was always meant to be, a home full of life. Sunday dinners with Mrs. Martinez, Emma's study groups, Josh's robotics team meetings. The walls are covered with new photos, new memories built on a foundation of hard-won wisdom. Sometimes I stand in the kitchen where I signed those papers, and I can still feel the weight of that moment. The pen in my hand, the tears in my eyes, the quiet voice of Robert reminding me about blue ink. That tiny clause saved everything, not just my house, but my grandchildren's future, my dignity, my faith in justice. One line of blue ink against an ocean of greed. People ask if I've forgiven Sarah. Yes and no. I've forgiven the daughter I raised, the one in the graduation photo. But the woman who threatened me with my grandchildren? Who threw me out of my home? That woman is a stranger I'm protected from by law and wisdom. The blue ink pen sits in a frame in my office now, beside Robert's photo. A reminder that the smallest acts of self-protection can have the greatest impact, that knowing your worth means defending it, that love without boundaries is not love at all. It's enabling. Emma asked me recently what I want my legacy to be. That I taught you to love with your heart, but sign with your head, I told her. And always, always use blue ink. The story ends where it began. In my kitchen, in my home, surrounded by the family who chose love over greed. Sarah's betrayal broke my heart, but not my spirit. And in the end, that blue ink clause, Robert's final gift, ensured that truth and justice prevailed. Thank you for listening to my story. If you know someone who might be facing elder abuse or family exploitation, please share this video. Remember, love doesn't mean letting people walk over you. Subscribe for more stories of standing up for yourself and comment below with your own experiences. Together, we're stronger than those who would take advantage of us. And remember, when signing anything important, always read the fine print and never be afraid to add your own terms in blue ink.